Welcome to another episode of the Bleed Blue Daily Show. We now have Jaden, who has audio. Jaden,
I
how's
can
it feel to be
speak.
back? You can speak.
It's nice that the words I'm saying are going through the microphones that are set up now at this point. It's unfortunate that last week was
It's nice
so
that we can
brutal.
understand the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, it's good. It would. I don't know. Maybe some people enjoyed it better without me talking. I don't know.
Just the whole episode of miming.
Yes, dead silence. Apparently, there are a lot of lip readers because nobody left during that show, which I found the most odd. This
I noticed
continuously grew throughout the entire show. Nobody was leaving, but nobody could hear anything I was saying. So that was, very confusing times last week. But we're back. We have sophisticated technology.
It's been a weird weekend, man. It's been a weird weekend. I wasn't necessarily going to do this, but I'm going to. We can, and then we'll jump into everything. Some people may have seen this, some people might not have. Tristan Ferris decided he was going to call us basically out for articles. I think it was rather unprofessional of him. We're all in this space. He's made plenty of mistakes on his own. There's plenty of tweets that show that, and apologies. And it's sad that we're having to have this conversation. It's not something that we wanted to do out in the open, but.
And Paul is gone now. This is fantastic. I guess it's just me now. I know Paul has a lot of things to say about some of the stuff that happened this weekend, but
so the reality is that we got we were advised. We asked some people, because we're not journalists, hey, how can we do this because we don't necessarily know what we're doing, and they said, hey, use AI and let AI help you. Like, cool, like we'll do that as we grow and we'll figure it out, right? For the vitriol that's come, no. And it was very unprofessional in how he posed it. We're not asking AI to write our articles. AI grading tools are very subjective. I wrote an article yesterday and posted it. I didn't run it through anything. 2 graders say it's 100% human. One says it's 85% AI. So that's just the dishonesty in it a little bit. So anyway, it's just sad that when you make mistakes or something happens that someone just can't send a message, because it's a very easy thing to handle. It's not like we're getting paid to do it or asking people to pay for it. So anyway, in the future, if anybody joins in the media, man, like, we understand it's hard. Everybody gets yelled at some point. And honestly, I think everybody on social media that doesn't have a picture and their name attached to it, it's real easy to be mad when it's not your name and your face out there and say a lot of cruel and mean shit. It would change if it was you. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say real fast on that point. I think it was, I've had no problem with the guy. I think he's done a lot of good stuff. And it's truly disappointing that's how that was handled. So, but at the same time, I think it's also disappointing if we just roll over and take it without having an explanation, because there's never anything that we try to do on purpose. It wasn't like we were trying to be harmful. So anyway, a little late because I got back from the Mark Stoops press conference. And it was interesting. There was a question posed to Mark about the chance of him hanging it up at the end of the season. He said 0% chance. I know a lot of people, there's been questions about that. People thinking potentially, could he walk away? Jaden, 2 things. Do you think that it was interesting that question was asked and his answer being so definitive? Now, it was hanging it up and walking away is different than other things happening, right? Like, it was definitely hanging up and walking away. Is that curious to you? Just that whole response?
It was, I don't know. The question was fine to me. I think it would be interesting to figure out what maybe the bigger picture behind it is, because what is he going to say no? Like, or what is he going to say yes, I'm retiring at the end of the year? Like, I just don't see, even if he was retiring at the end of the year, I don't think that would be a smart answer from him. So that was a little bit interesting. But when it first started getting spread out on Twitter, I'm seeing Stoops isn't leaving. And then I read the quote, and it's like he's not retiring. And I'm like,
well, we took a lot of flack for, look, it's really funny how we take flack from stuff, and then we don't know anything, and then a lot of the things that like just with Jasper, the situation was the exact same way we said it was. We don't know everything, we just know certain things. And when we were over here saying, hey, like Stoops is only leaving if Stoops wants to leave, right? Like that comment really goes and cements that, hey, like we said that. Now, if Kentucky goes and offers him half of a buyout, a quarter of a, I don't know, 3/4 of the buyout with maybe some incentives, does that change the tune? If we lose the next 3 games, maybe. But I agree, and we've been saying this pretty adamantly. I don't think Stoops is gonna just walk away. I know that's the hope because his brother did it.
Yeah, I mean, we know that it will take another school now to have interest for him to consider a lower buyout, because
no, the buyout's different. The buyout is only like $4.5 million or something like that. It's way less for a buyout. It's a buyout for firing. It's not a buyout for leaving. So if he leaves, Kentucky could essentially just waive the buyout from another school trying to take him.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, if retirement was an option, there is we'll give you 3/4 of your buyout, we'll see you later, like he rides off into the sunset kind of thing. But now I feel like that is, I mean, obviously less likely because he said it's not going to happen. But I think that was maybe something that could have helped, maybe a little. I don't know if say helped, but maybe have eased the situation, made it an easier process if he could have just retired. Now I think it's important that if they do decide that some type of separation ends up being the way they want to go at the end, he's going to need another school, because he has said he's like, it appears that he's not retiring. He's going to need somebody else to pay him money that we won't be, if there is some type of separation under whatever circumstance that happens to be.
Kentucky, I think in the AP top 25, it just came out, only jumped up to 19. Are you surprised?
No, I mean, I don't.
I'm a little surprised. They still have Arkansas ahead of Kentucky, which irritates me.
I mean, that'll get fixed in a couple weeks, really. Like, it's not. We've all watched the basketball games except for the people who vote. Arkansas is not better than us. Like, we know this. It's not even close. Brea by himself has made more threes than Arkansas has. Thanks, Casey, for that stat.
Brea was like, it was weird, right? Because he struggled kind of in that second exhibition game, and now he's basically Steph Curry.
Well, yeah. I mean, it took him a couple weeks to get over a foot injury and get his conditioning back and get his legs under him and get the form dialed in, and then he's back to being the best shooter in the country, like we all thought he was. There was definitely a struggle there, but he seems to be moving well now, and obviously the shot's falling for him. So, I mean, the AP poll are we probably better than 19? I would think so. Are we better than Arkansas?
Let's look at some teams that are above it just for now, right? After seeing a week and a half of college basketball, is Kentucky, we just say better than Arkansas, better than Cincinnati? I would say yes.
Yeah, I have not watched a second of Cincinnati, but I refuse to believe they're better. I watched a little bit of Indiana. We're probably better, I would say. They didn't look too bad.
Marquette.
No, they lost the good guy from last year. And
Creighton.
That big guy's a monster.
That'd be a good
That
game.
big guy is a monster. Did he have 49 points in their season opener? Like 49 points and 20 rebounds?
Yeah, he's a monster. Purdue. I think we're better than Purdue.
Well, Purdue's best, like the new Edey broke his leg last night in their game, so he's done. Or maybe not.
Baylor and Tennessee round out the top 15 or the top 20. I would say objectively, I think we could. I think that's where you start to get into teams that say, today, are we better than them? Because like Gonzaga, you were like, man, they are really good. And then you're like, is Baylor really bad? Right. So I feel like Arkansas, Baylor, and and even Tennessee to an extent, it's hard to kind of gauge because you don't know if their actual good wins are good yet.
Yeah, I think with Baylor, this looks like a team that'll get better as the season goes. But I admittedly, I'm pretty sure I sent them in my Final Four predictions. Through 2 games, I am worried about their spacing big time.
Yeah,
It has not looked good. I think they'll get better as the season goes on because they have a good coach and the roster's really good. They have a lot of really good players.
Yeah.
But they have not looked like a cohesive offense or defense. But really, if you don't look good on offense, the teams get running on you on defense, and that,
yeah, I agree. I think that's fair. It's going to be real interesting to see what happens. Obviously tomorrow night with Kentucky taking on Duke. There's some people out there saying tomorrow you're going to see why Cooper Flagg's the number one, blah, blah, blah.
we'll get into him. He's a freak.
Sure, but like, is Kentucky's defensive game plan, if you're Mark Pope, are you basically going let Cooper Flagg get his and stop everybody else? Or is that just the wrong game plan? And who guards him? And who guards him?
That was going to be my first question for you, was who guards him. I think that, well, we have the 3 really good defenders. We have Lamont, Ortega, and we have Amari. And I think all 3 of them have skills that could make them effective against Cooper Flagg. Obviously, starting with Lamont at point guard, it's not a good, obviously.
The Cooper Flagg is 6'9", right?
Yes.
So,
but the thing about Lamont is it's kind of if you've ever watched Patrick Beverly guard Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is brutal against Patrick Beverly, or was, a couple years ago. I think that might have switched a little bit as they've gotten older. But Durant was terrible against Patrick Beverly with a 7-8 inch size advantage, because every time Kevin Durant would put the ball on the floor, Beverly's hands were there. So I think that in times that's something that Lamont can do, just because his hands are ridiculous. It feels like he smacks the ball away from the guy's guard. Like, it's like 3 times a possession. It feels like he's getting his hands.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I feel like the issue is potentially, I feel like Ortega's probably the guy that you want on him because of the physicality. The 3 inches there, I don't think is as big of a deal, right? Like, I would, if you look at Ortega, and look at his size in just overall, right? He's 6'4", actually gives up like 5 inches. I think he might be a little bit bigger. Cooper Flagg might not be full 6'9" either. I think that's where the physicality you have that. I think you might see Andrew Carr on him a little bit.
I would be worried about that matchup.
I might be too, but I mean, like, I think, but rotating, right? I think if you rotate, you're putting basically a 7-footer on him. You're putting a smaller guard, like, that's going to get right up underneath him. The big thing is if he gets positional post presence, right? Like, then you're in trouble if you get some of those other guys. But I think the main guy probably has to be Ortega because of of what he brings physically and how he can really get up in him. And let's be honest, like, the physicality that he can bring, I think, is very bruising.
Yeah, Ortega is the person that's going to guard him the most, if I had to imagine. I'm trying to think of, when we played Paulo, who I think is not the same. He's not nearly as mobile as Cooper Flagg, but it's a similar type of size advantage and just positional versatility that you see. And we had guys that could match up sidewise, and it works sometimes. But eventually he found the spot where he could go high post, free throw extended. He found the spot where he could take advantage of those guys. And we had nobody that could rotate on. I think Ortega will be first. I would be interested. It's probably not going to happen and probably not going to work. If you wanted to go, a couple possessions of Ainsley on him, just size-wise, I think that there is a real spot, especially with the Maluach, I think is how you say it, especially with him. If he were to go out for any moment of time, Amari on Cooper Flagg would make some sense to me if you're going to try to Giannis him and wall up on the paint and make him shoot threes. He has struggled a little bit to shoot threes. I mean, I think he's 2 for 8, but last game he was 2 for 4. So, you can try to make him shoot, but like, I think that your idea of making him score, let him be the main guy, let him go for as many as he wants, and keep Knuppel, Mullock, Proctor, Foster, keep these guys from getting the open shots and some of the looks that they're getting because of the attention flag gets may be an effective strategy. And I think that's pretty reasonable as well.
Yeah, I think that's all. Like, I think that's all fair. It's going to be very interesting tomorrow, I think, because it's a tale of two teams, right? It's a tale of a lot of young talent versus a lot of experience. We've seen in college basketball that experience wins, right? Like, I'm going into this game before I was really like, I don't know about this game. Honestly, now I'm like, I think Kentucky can win this game, and I think Kentucky can win this game going away potentially. Like, like after seeing especially how Amari can, like, what he brings, like, that's scary. Brea looks unconscious right now. Ortega looks like a completely revamped player from last year. Lamont is Lamont, right? And then Kerr brings just unreal energy and ball and the pace that he brings and can move, and pace of play that gets added when he's on the floor is incredible. So I think that Kentucky, with multiple looks, both offensively and defensively, could potentially be a very hard thing for a young Duke team. Now, someone like Cooper Flag can go for 50 and it changes the whole dynamic of the game. Do I think he will? No, I don't think he's going to go for 50. If he goes for 50, you probably lose. I think you
50,
probably need,
like, retire.
I think you
opt out of the season, go to the draft.
I think you need to keep Cooper probably in that 20 to 25 range. And anything else starts to get more dicey, right? Because you're not going to shut everyone else down.
Yeah, I would think if you're gonna go with the strategy of let him get his and keep everybody else down, 2025 may even be low if you're really gonna just let him go one-on-one and just go with whoever. I don't think they're gonna do that. I think they're gonna switch it up a bunch. But if that's the strategy they end up with, he's only averaging 13.5 points a game. Now it's like 13.5 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks, 2. Like, he does everything, but he's not having the best shooting performances currently, especially stuff that we had seen from him previously in some of the Team USA workouts and the high school season, EYBL, all those things. He's not playing as well offensively with this Duke team as he did on those teams. More bodies around him, more people want the ball, things of that nature. But if you're going to let him go off, you may even have to go for more, because he's while he's currently struggling, he is a guy that can just
Cooper Flag. Are you talking about Cooper Flag? He's averaging 15 a game. He's struggling from 3.
Yeah, but the field goal percentage is also not great.
Here's an interesting.
The second game was much better.
Here's an interesting.
He was struggling a little bit efficiency wise.
Interesting aspects from. So Kentucky is shooting 53.5% as a team, has 10 guys in 7 guys, right? And 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 guys that are in double figures and shooting 40% from 3. Duke has 5 players averaging double figures, shooting 52.2% and 41.8% from 3. So statistically wise, they're shooting better than 3 than we are as a team. And we are shooting better overall by a point. So it's a really interesting matchup from that perspective, because both teams basically mirror each other. Like, there's not a big difference. Now, obviously, you look at competition and things like that, and that goes into it. But I don't think that, like, I think Kentucky. Let me see how. I think Kentucky, from the upside potential, Kentucky can just put up 120 at any night. I think that's what makes them. If you were looking for a team, I think that's going to get a spanking, I would say it leans more in the Wildcats direction. I'm not saying Duke can't win, but I don't think that if you're looking at Duke winning by 10 to 15, I think that's less likely than Kentucky winning by 15 to 20.
Yeah, I can follow you there. I think that's fair, because the offense is so versatile and explosive that I don't see a situation where they just are bad from offense. Like, I really don't. There's too many good players, too many people who can shoot and pass for me to think that there will be games where they're just bad offensively. Like,
no, I don't. Who, like Kentucky or Duke?
Kentucky.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. But, like, a bad game for Kentucky could be 80, 87, 88, right? Like,
yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting to is I don't see them playing bad. They may play Kentucky bad. If they play Kentucky bad, it's like everybody else is like
But look, there is a world where, and this is the hard part about a team like Kentucky. There is a world where everybody doesn't shoot well in a game, right? It's real hard though for that world to culminate, for that to happen, right? You got 7 dudes averaging double figures. That's kind of hard to me for that to happen.
If all of the shooters on the team go cold for a game, the same game, you know what? It's unfortunate. That really stinks. If, people talk a lot about numbers when they don't work, and especially analytics. It's analytics, and the stuff that Pope is running is not about what will work every time. It's about what works most often. So if you have 8 chances to have somebody that's a 35% 3-point shooter or above out there, if you have 8 of those dudes, if all 8 of them are cold, you know what? That stinks. Like you lose the game and you're just going to go. But the way that you play with efficiency and play with these numbers, the way that Pope does, is you give yourself the best chance of that not happening. Where we saw in the last couple of years, you didn't give yourself the best chance of that happening because they relied on 1 or 2 people to fill that role, as opposed to potentially 6, 7, 8 guys on this team that could fill the role of stretching the floor, being offensive catalyst. But I was saying, when I think it's hard that Kentucky will play bad offensive games, I more mean that is to agree with your point of it's much more likely to me that Kentucky were to blow out Duke than Duke were to blow out Kentucky, because
I'm not saying that's going to happen. Like we're going to get clipped and say, "Oh, Kentucky fans said." No, I think that this will probably be. I think this will be a relatively close game. I think it'll be pretty competitive. Look, could a team at the end win by 10 because of fouls and stuff? Maybe, but I don't think it'll be that kind of a game. I think it'll be a very tight game throughout. I think you'll have a game of runs. You might see a team get up 6-8, the other team come back, right? You might see those ebbs and flows, because I think from the firepower perspective, you're right. There's a lot of firepower on the court. It's going to come down to 2 things in this game: defense and rebounding. Kentucky, you talked about this. We wanted to see the team rebound better. What do we do against Bucknell? We rebounded our ass off. So much better. 22 offensive rebounds. What was it? 57 total rebounds. It was amazing.
Something ridiculous like that. Yeah. I mean, it was a clear
win.
Point of emphasis. I mean, we were at the second TV timeout, or almost at it. And I looked at the people I was sitting with at the game, and I was like, we're on pace for 40 offensive rebounds. Like, it
was crazy. It was crazy.
But like, we were a reasonable chunk into the game, and we were on pace still for 40. And so it was clear. We talked about the second half of the Wright State game. They were locked in rebounding the ball. First half of Bucknell, especially, they were locked in rebounding the ball. And that's what you want to see out of a team that is running so much and playing with so much pace, is being able to do the dirty stuff as well.
Give me an overreaction if we win and an overreaction if we lose.
The overreaction we win is
Rando putting Canva number 9 banners up all over his profile.
I think I'll start hanging flyers. I think I'll start parading through the streets. No, I mean, if we win, I wouldn't be shocked. I think that we did the non-conference slate, the big games, what we predicted, and I think we both predicted a loss to Duke last Monday, and then we watched them play 2 more times, and now I'm like, well. And I think that the big change for me is Amari personally, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I'm excited for it. I think both teams it's just so much talent. You don't get a lot of games where there's this much talent on the court. Both sides, just everybody running up and down. A bunch of people who can play basketball at a high level, and a bunch of people who can play impact games in a high way. And I think that that's going to be really entertaining.
Well, we'll talk more about this also tomorrow, because we play tomorrow. What did you think about the weekend that was in college football?
Oh, I thought that the college football weekend was a pretty decent amount of fun. Do we want to start with the poor news for half of this group?
I mean, I don't see there was any poor news all weekend. It just I think the most controversial piece to this whole thing was BYU and Houston. I've never seen an athletic director come out and rip a conference like he did. There's a fine coming for him, I bet. Did you see that? Was that a little surprising?
I did see that. I asked how many Kentucky Blue Natty Lights does Mitch have to drink before he goes out there and starts yelling at people like that.
I mean, I don't know if he drinks, but one might do it.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen an athletic director do what he did. He just goes out there and he's like, "We won the game. We got cheated. The refs are terrible. This was awful." It sounds like what me and you come on and say after a game on here on this show. And he said it he broke into the coach's live post game show before he could come out and said these things. And it was like, oh, this was pretty funny. I wish that more people would do this. Did you have the same idea as me? As like, I wish more people would kind of do that. This was funny.
I thought it. Listen, I think that it's going to take that for like officiating to get cleaned up in college in basketball and college football, because you've seen some horrendous calls and things going that. Whether this was a right call or a wrong call in the moment doesn't matter.
What do you think about
I think
that,
there's.
actually?
I mean, if you look the replay, it looked like he got held.
I thought it was holding too.
I looked at it,
holding, but it looked like reasonably. Like I could see why they threw it.
Yeah, like he looked like he held him way past 5 yards, right? Yeah. Like it looked like holding to me.
I thought so too. Which makes it even funnier to me that he was so upset, because everyone was kind of looks like holding. Like really,
kind of did. I mean, that didn't lose the game for them. Like they still had plenty of opportunity to stop them. It wasn't like he like jabbed him within 5 yards and they threw a flag because he touched him, right? I thought it was probably like okay, but look, I think on the greater premise of it is I think you're going to have to see coaches and athletic directors taking fines and kind of really doing this and getting fans really upset about stuff, because look, I mean, that may not be the most egregious call we've seen, but there's been a lot of egregious calls. I mean, we've seen it ourselves in this year. The last 3 years of officiating in college football and basketball, I think has been piss poor. I think it's been terrible across the board, big games and everything. So it's interesting that happened. So you might see more of it. I wouldn't mind it. I think the fans liked it. I think it shows that they care, right? So that's a positive. On the flip side, if you do it too much, I think they're just going to think you're crying wolf.
Yeah, and referees, especially in basketball. I don't know if you feel the same way. I find it quite hard to watch college basketball games. The last couple of years, I still do it because it's fun and it's what I like to do. But refereeing in these games is pathetic. It's brutal. And the problem is nobody wants to be a referee. So there's nothing that we can do to fix this, because they get, destroyed all, their entire career is getting destroyed and get, no thanks, all this stuff. So it's like nobody wants to be an official. So there's nobody new to replace them. And these guys are like not in shape enough to keep up with these players. The players are just too fast, and there's not enough referees for them to be that much slower than the players. So I think that's like they're not in position because they can't be in position because they're just not moving nearly as quickly as, and that doesn't get rid of all the calls, but I think that plays a big factor in especially in some of the judgment calls and stuff like that, down the field holdings and things of that nature, is they're just not athletic enough to keep up with the players, and they can't see it. So and I don't know what the solution is, really.
I mean, you don't necessarily want to have penalties reviewed, because we tried that in the NFL, and that was interesting. Pass interference.
Too prideful to say the referees were ever wrong. He just said every call stands.
But listen, if it was done right, I think you would have it right. Like I think you probably need to have calls that are big like that reviewed in the last 2 minutes. Like maybe don't do it all game, but in winning time, right? Like in the time where if you make that call and it's the wrong call, the team wins or loses potentially. I think that might be where you should have that. Now, look, saying that and implementing it and putting it in practice is not necessarily the same thing, right? But like also you look at college basketball and they review out of bounds now, right, in the last 2 minutes to make sure they're getting possessions right. I think there might be a happy median there for college football. I mean, we'll see, but it was kind of crazy.
I'm wondering if maybe there's a way to streamline this and make this quick, where it's, instead of doing a formal review and doing all this stuff, if the coach has a button and 2 times a game they can click, booth review. The booth reviews are real quick. If it's an obvious flip it. And and that could be it. Maybe that's a solution that you can come up with to try to get, some of the bigger calls and some of the important stuff right. If the coaches have two, that they can be like, Booth, quick flip this. There's no way that's right. They go, yeah, that was the wrong call. Flip it. Like the Tennessee offsides that we had, where they jumped off sides and our offensive line moved. It like if Stoops could just click, review that real quick. They see, oh, it was the Tennessee guy that moved. Flip that, move it. Let's move on. But I would be skeptical of and I would be skeptical of their willingness to do more breaks in the game and kind of extending the game longer when all of the TV people and the people in charge are trying to make the games shorter. So I don't know. I wish there was a better solution for referee problems.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
When I was talking about the sad moments, I thought we were going to get into a little Miami action to start.
They just played like shit. I mean, that was not a Georgia Tech issue. That was a Miami issue. And the defense didn't play astronomically poor for Miami. I mean, it wasn't like the thing that got them. It was their offense. And like, I think they were 1 for 4, 1 for 5 on fourth down. They got inside. I mean, if you kick field goals on all those, they win the game, right? Hindsight, hey, probably shouldn't have went for that. They were in field goal range, I think, 3 times where they went for it on fourth down and didn't get it. Even on the last play that Ward got strip sacked on, he had a receiver just wide. I mean, if he just looks left instead of right, I mean, it's Miami's winning. Listen, how many times you see that with teams that end up going to the playoffs and stuff? They have one clunker like that. I mean, look, how many undefeated teams are left right now? 4?
I have no idea. A couple frauds.
Oregon's not a fraud.
No.
Boise State is undefeated.
Where's this Indiana? I don't want to talk about Indiana.
10-0.
This is the fakest, most ridiculous 10-0 and treatment of a team I've ever seen in my life. Are they number 5? Did I see that? The number 5 team in America. I think they're ranked higher than Tennessee in the polls. And I don't care about the people. I just said that. But the Indiana stuff's getting out of control. This team is not that good. They're not that good. They're playing like they got a pick 6 in the Washington game and ended the game. Like the game was over at that point. The Washington quarterback freaked out with game day and all of that. But it's not like they're not playing anybody good. Like Michigan is not that good of a team, and Michigan had multiple chances at the end to take the game away from them. Like I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are actually good, but I cannot wait for them to play Ohio State because I think Ohio State is going to smash them.
I don't think Tennessee's that good either, to be honest with you. I think if I'm looking at I think Indiana, Tennessee, probably even BYU are not necessarily the teams. If you look at like the teams that are just outside the top 10, Georgia, Miami, Boise State, SMU, and Texas A&M, I think they're all better than Tennessee and Indiana. Tennessee just objectively has Tennessee doesn't have the engine, and their defense is starting to get a little bit more exposed than it used to. Like people are starting to figure their defense out a little bit more. I don't know if Nico's out what his status is because I know he got hurt. But I mean, if he misses, like they play Georgia this weekend. If Nico doesn't play, that's going to be a bloodbath. And
would you play Nico this week?
Would I? I mean, Tennessee has to, because if Tennessee loses, I don't think Tennessee has a shot at the playoffs.
That would be interesting.
They have one decent win, right? Like, I mean, they beat Alabama, but other than that, I mean, are you going to put them in over Georgia or Alabama right now?
Well, Georgia is quickly running into the problem of Carson Beck just only throws interceptions now, which is really going to screw them over.
Yeah, but this
game's in Athens. Is not looking good in any of the games.
This game's in Athens. If it was in Knoxville, I'd say it was different. But this game is in Athens, and I think that's a whole nother animal.
I mean, yeah, but he's just throwing. I think he's thrown 12 picks in 6 games. It's the most by any quarterback in the SEC since like 2018. Like all of a sudden, Carson Beck has forgotten how to play football. He showed it against us. He showed it against Bama for the first half. He showed it in the Florida game a little bit. He showed it in the Ole Miss game that they played this week. he's forgotten how to play quarterback. He was the projected #1 pick coming into the season, and he can't play quarterback anymore. So Georgia is confusing to me. I almost wonder. I almost need to like live research the Tennessee situation because I feels like they should probably get in anyway. Just given some of the other situations, and I think some of the other teams will also lose because isn't it just Georgia for Tennessee now?
Yeah, well, they also have Vandy at the end of the year if you think Vandy can potentially give them a game.
I mean, they can give them a game, but I still don't think Vandy is that good. Tennessee, I am currently pulling up the schedule. Yeah, they play Georgia, UTEP, and Vandy. Their losses are to Arkansas on the road.
That Arkansas loss is a bad loss, though, compared to the other teams ahead of them. Like, Georgia's 2 losses are against Ole Miss and Bama. Tennessee's loss, if they lose this week, would be Arkansas and Georgia. Alabama's losses are Tennessee and Vandy. I guess that's bad too, right? Like, so Tennessee and Alabama both have a stinker in there, or not necessarily. But look, objectively, Vanderbilt is better than Arkansas, objectively. So, look, I think a lot of it has to do with what it goes down. Like, if Arkansas was to go, or I think it matters a lot of how Arkansas and Vandy finish the season at this point. Because if it's down to those two, yeah, okay, Tennessee beat Alabama, but whose other loss is worse?
I think that the answer that ends up, or maybe the answer that it should be, or if we were looking at it right now, what the answer should be is probably just that all of them should be in. And we shouldn't have to be picking between one of the two. It's probably that all of them should be in the playoffs. And things will work themselves out at the end of the year. They always do. People complain with the 4-team playoff that we don't know how to pick 4 teams. Yeah, we did. There were only 2 or 3 teams good enough most seasons to win the national championship. It was about arguing who is going to be 4 or 5. And even if it's not seeding 4 or 5, it's about who is the 4th or 5th team in. And it's going to be the same way now with 12 and 13. Like, we're gonna get to the point where 6 teams are going to separate themselves as like the obvious, or outside of the conference champions. 3 teams are going to solidify themselves as like the real at large, and then we're going to be picking between teams that don't matter anyway. They'll get blown out in a road game in the first round. So like some of these teams, like SMU is gonna collapse. Like the ACC is gonna collapse. All of those teams are not going to finish with 1 loss. Like SMU, Clemson, Miami, not all of those teams are making the playoffs. So like it's going to work itself out. The teams are going to lose. These teams still have to play each other. Some of them still play like real teams, and we'll just get a 3rd loss. Like if Tennessee were to lose to Georgia, I don't know if that means they're out. But if Georgia were to lose to Tennessee, that would be like, oh, Georgia might not make it. Like I can't.
If Georgia loses, they're out, right? Like there's no. So, yeah. Georgia's out with 3 losses because now Ole Miss is now back into the equation with that win, right? So there's a big log jam. Like that, there's a big log jam now. And I got to tell you, that loss that Kentucky is like the biggest enigma now in the world, because like you lose to Georgia by 1 point, you beat Ole Miss, you take Tennessee to the wire, and you lose to Vanderbilt, you lose to Florida, and you lose to Auburn. Like, this is the biggest enigma. Like, it's not just like the fact that our record's not good. It's the fact that we've like, it doesn't make sense. We went toe to toe with 3 top 7 teams and had stinkers against South Carolina. And South Carolina's kind of an enigma too, right? Like, South Carolina looks like they can beat anybody, and then some weeks they turn around and look like they can't beat a Division II team.
I think the concerning thing is, I think that the thing that
it's all on offense, man.
Well, I think the hindsight would tell you is that South Carolina was probably just good.
Well, maybe, but the overarching thing with Kentucky is the fact that they're 124th in total offense and 125th in scoring. Like, that's it. If Kentucky was 87th in offense and 80th in scoring, they're probably 7-2 right now. Let that that's not necessarily unfair. They beat Vandy. They probably beat Vandy, Georgia, Auburn.
Florida.
In that 3, South Carolina, I don't know. Maybe they beat South Carolina if they're a little bit better, start the game and it's not so much of a drop back and get your quarterback killed for the whole game. I don't know. It's just a very interesting enigma. So
I don't know. It is interesting how the season has gone with some of the games that we've played close and some of the games that we've not been close in. I think when you look at and the Georgia game is the one that confuses me more than Ole Miss even, because we talked about Tennessee. To beat a team like that on the road, everything has to go right, and you need to get lucky a couple times. Against Ole Miss, everything went right. We got lucky a couple times.
Did not happen with Georgia. We did not get lucky.
No, we did things right, got unlucky a couple times against Georgia, and that was the situation that we were in.
Yeah, that interception,
we did things right and got lucky, and we were in the game and couldn't pull it out in the end.
That interception in the end ends up being like maybe the play that changes the trajectory of the entire season. Like that should have been ruling on the field stands all day. A lot of people say that. A lot of rules experts say that. And that ends up being probably the play, because if they win that game, I think objectively, I think Kentucky's whole trajectory for the season changes. I think we're sitting 7-2, 6-3 at the worst right now going into the last 3 games.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that the morale could change. I don't know how much of it is kind of morale and things of that nature, or just like injuries. Because after the Georgia game, they still beat Ole Miss. All of the bad stuff happened after they pulled off a top 10 upset. So I don't know that Georgia ruined the morale as much as they got hurt. Like, the good players got hurt. Like, and teams figured out that if you can make them go 5 yards of play on offense, they will screw it up. They will mess it up when they get in the red zone. They always do, every time. And the only team that we did screw it up against Ole Miss. We fumbled against them too. It just happened to drop into our guy's hand that time. So it worked every game. Make them go 5 yards of play. They'll screw it up. They do every time. Every game we've seen it. It's brutal. And that's the biggest problem with the offense is they have found no answer for teams who are doing our defensive strategy to that. It's exactly what we've been doing for 6 years. Teams are doing to us, and who would have thought it works against all college offenses?
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. It's going to be an interesting week, obviously, because we play Duke tomorrow. It's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens. Stoops was very mum on the quarterback situation, on injuries. Said we'll learn more later in the week. I'm sure things will start to leak out a little bit more. So that'll be interesting. So we're going to see what happens there. Look, Kentucky has to win 3 straight to get bowl eligible. You feel like you get like 2 is very possible. You feel like that third, though, woof. That third doesn't seem as likely, but look, you never know. I mean, look, the one thing about this team that doesn't make sense is the really good teams they play really good against for the most part, especially on defense. And look, I've said this all year. All it takes is the offense for one game against one team that they shouldn't play good against, and they win. I mean, that's why, like I said, Texas isn't an out of reach game. You don't feel like it's going to happen, but if it did, it wouldn't necessarily be the most shocking thing. I think Kentucky's probably the best 3-6 team in the country. Like, I know that's not like necessarily like a big thing, but okay, team with losing record. I'd say they're probably the best team with a losing record in the country, because if a couple things go right, their record could be completely reversed or better.
It's going to be hard to make that argument. I don't know if I'd post it on social media, because I think I think we've lost to a couple of those teams that we're fighting for the best team with a losing record. But like skill,
but you know what I'm saying.
I don't think I would disagree with you.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. I don't disagree with you. I'm saying, people are going to misread that situation, and people also think that the team that wins the game is automatically the better team. On Twitter, people think that, which is probably the most annoying thing about social media.
Social media is very annoying, especially this week. Anyway, I got to go do dad stuff. My kids are downstairs by themselves, kind of destroying the house, so I'm watching them on the camera. So I need to go down and do dad stuff. But tomorrow we'll talk more about UK Duke, and we'll hopefully maybe start to get some more answers about football. But it's really exciting to have a big basketball game tomorrow. So Jaden will give predictions and everything tomorrow. Maybe we'll have some other people join the show, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.